Hi there, Dr. Gary here on the road. We sell dental practices nationwide. We are dental practice brokers. I was a dentist for 25 years and now I am a broker, a dental broker for the last 14 years. So today's topic is last minute chaos, oil tank problem at dental office. Okay, we'll get into that. So as you know, we now have 10 employees. We're in 22 states. We're continuing to grow. We have, we're open and for business 363 days a year. We take off Christmas and Easter. Our phone number is 201-663-0935 and our email is, or our website is dentalpracticeguide.com or Nationwide Dental Practice Brokers. So, call us anytime, even if you just want to chat, you want a free appraisal, we're happy to talk to you. Don't worry about it. We're not going to charge you to talk to you. Now, everything you're about to hear is for informational entertainment. It is not legal advice. So anyway, now if you're thinking about selling to those big DSOs, the big corporate dentistry, give us a call because we know how to work with them. We know who's active, who's not active, who's having financial trouble, who's merging, who takes forever to go to closing, who has the money available, who's using their in-house money and not credit line monies. We just want to know about these things. So give us a call and we could talk to you about this. Now, often when we work with the dental DSOs, most of the time they pay our commission. So there's no commission to the seller of a DSO, to a DSO. They'll pay our commission. And when you work with us, we'll get your legal fees for all $1 million practices or higher. Sale price $1 million or higher, legal fees will be reimbursed upon successful closing based on some minor criteria. But we'll reimburse your legal fees. So essentially, you're getting your legal fees taken care of. So anyway, what happened this morning? We're selling, we have a licensed real estate broker that handles the transaction for the real estate for us. So we knew that there was an oil tank, underground oil tank, still active. This is a combo, dental office and real estate. So we knew that there was an oil tank. We informed the buyer. This is the original oil tank. It's still being utilized. We have no problems with it, but we're informing you there is an underground oil tank. You have to disclose that immediately. There was no mention of it for a long time. Well, it's not our responsibility to mention again. The buyer knew there was an oil tank there and it was old. So now it becomes the buyer and the buyer's attorney to pursue how they want to proceed or remedies, whatever. Zero mention. Now we're about 2 weeks from closing. The buyer wants to get an inspector in. Fine, that's expected. The inspector came up with a thick book of all these problems, as always. We tried to sell it as is, but one of the items was oil tank. They want the oil tank removed. They never mentioned this. We're 2 weeks from closing, and they're now mentioning they want the oil tank removed. The buyer and the buyer's attorney who knew about this should have mentioned this a long time ago. As soon as I heard this, the first thing I did was call the bank. The bank knows me. We send them business. I said, what is your policy on oil tanks? They said, we do not require a phase one. That's environmental phase one. In other words, you do not have to remove the oil tank as far as our guidelines go if it's under $1 million. It may be the buyer and the buyer's attorney or in the buyer's interest to remove the tank, but we don't have a requirement. You remove the oil tank. Oil tanks are generally removed most of the time, but if the buyer doesn't ask for it, what are you going to do? You don't volunteer it. They know it's there and their attorney knows it's there. Buyer never said anything. Bank does not need an oil tank removal. So what we did was, before this deal began, and knowing there was a tank, I got the buyer with a great dental attorney who also had an environmental department in case he ran into any problems. Fortunately, we chose the right attorneys. Now, we're used to this chaos. Now we have to figure out what to do. Now, sometimes if you work with the buyer and their attorney, you can put money into escrow. Could be $20,000, $25,000. Well, it's about $2,500 to remove the tank. And if there's localized leakage, maybe it's 6,500, 10,000, somewhere around there. It could get a lot worse. It could go into the groundwater. It could go underneath the building. It could be significantly more. But I think that's only about 2% of the time that happens. But you just can't guess at it. So we offered, rather than delay the closing, we're trying to offer the buyer's attorney to put money in escrow and declared amount, 20, 25,000, put it in escrow and say we'll take care of it after the closing, or give the buyer the money to take care of it. We just want to go to closing. So we have to run around. I'm running around all morning, making calls, calling the bank, calling the attorneys, coordinating everything, calling the buyer to see, do we have any flexibility here of putting money in escrow. And we also, his dental attorney, the buyer's dental attorney, was calling, trying to negotiate with the buyer's attorney and the buyer, would you accept money in escrow instead of taking the tank out now? So at this point, they don't want to go for it. So I don't know what's going to happen. This is all chaos, all money. This is why you need a broker to handle this thing, because remember, I could talk to the buyer, the seller, the buyer's attorney, the seller's attorney, the bank. You're trying to do this deal yourself without a broker. Who are you going to call? You're not going to call the bank, because they don't want to talk to you. They don't know you. I send business to the bank, and I don't care what bank the buyer uses, but I work with all the banks. So I have that flexibility of getting that information. And I got that all this in the morning. And then I could call the seller's attorney and speak to him. I call the buyer's attorney, speak to him. I'm in the middle. This is why you need a broker. We're hustling all morning to get this done. We don't charge extra for it. It's all included in our fee. But, this is what happens. And you got to be prepared. You're 2 weeks before the closing. Now they want the oil tank removed. And nobody mentioned anything before. Even though we disclosed it, even though they knew it. Luckily, I was